Okay, hello all you crazy people out there. My name is Dragonite and welcome back to another video about Scribble, the text renderer for GameMaker that is actually really good and doesn't suck. I sound like an AARP commercial. So with that out of the way, one of the things that I imagine a lot of people are going to want to do is the typewriter text effect, which I showed off in this sample at the beginning of the last video, where there's a typewriter text effect and the text is appearing per character. And that is somewhat more advanced than simply drawing text. If you want to, you can do the like string copy of the original string versus time trick that works with regular GameMaker draw text. I'm just gonna cheat by using T++ right there, like you can technically do and is discouraged because it's really hard to read. If you want, this will kind of work. As you can see, it's getting a little bit weird when it comes to the shaking text and the animated effects and stuff. And that's because of the way Scribble works internally. I would not recommend doing that. As it happens, there is a built-in auto typewriter set of functionality with Scribble. And I really hope... I mentioned this to Mr. Adams a couple days ago. Where did that come from? I'm now picturing Gomez Adams writing a text renderer. So I mentioned to the author of Scribble a couple days ago that in some places in Scribble's code it's called typewriter, and in some places in Scribble's code it's called autotype. And I hope that he renames some things one way or another for consistency purposes later on. Anyway, to make use of this, we have to understand a little more about what Scribble's doing internally. Scribble Draw doesn't have anything to do with ordinary GameMaker draw text. If you feel like wading into this 1,000+ line script, 1,200 line script, you will find a lot of things related to vertex buffers. Vertex buffers are kind of like GameMaker surfaces in that they can store a large amount of graphical information that can be drawn all in one shot, which is where Scribble gets most of its speed from, and which is what allows it to do all these crazy text effects, because it can then pass the information to a shader, and the shader can do the black magic of shaders. I'm not going to talk about shaders. Shaders make my head spin. I'm glad there are other people who write them, because that means I don't have to. Anyway, what that means is that the Scribble Draw, in addition to performing a behavior, is going to also return a value, which we can capture in a variable, and I'm going to call the variable Scribble. You can call it whatever you want. And for our intents and purposes, we just have to think of this as an object that contains the Scribble data. It's kind of not... The actual implementation is something kind of different, but we don't have to worry about that. We just have to think of this value that's stored in this variable right now as an object that contains Scribble behavior. And we can do that with things such as Scribble autotype fade in. And that's going to take a text element, which is the variable that was returned from Scribble Draw, and it's going to take a method.
Hey.
And this is one of the places where I mentioned a minute ago, where there's a bit of a name mismatch between typewriter text and autotype. As of this current version, Scribble 502, the constants that determine how the autotype works are called Scribble typewriter per character, but it's possible in the future that these are renamed to something more along the lines of Scribble autotype per character. So if you're watching this video in the future and you can't find this constant, it has most likely been renamed. It has most likely not been removed entirely, because autotype is a pretty popular feature. I'm going to make the speed, how about 1? That's an 11. I'm going to make the speed 1 and the smoothness 1. And we're going to run the game, and this is going to not do quite exactly what I am hoping it will. And it just disappears. And the reason for that is that Scribble autotype fade in is not a... it's not a script that updates Scribble so much as it's a script that kicks off the typewriter effect. And you only want this to be fired off once, preferably when you create the Scribble data. Or I suppose if you want to restart the typewriter effect later on. So to do that, you can do a whole song and dance that goes something like, I don't know, Scribble created equals false, and then you can check if Scribble created equals false, then kick off the typewriter effect and set Scribble created to true. And this will do what you want, but it's not terribly elegant. Okay, that's a little fast. Let's change the speed down to, let's say, a quarter of that. I want to say it's characters per frame. I'm not sure. I'm a little surprised. I would be a little surprised anyway if Juju did not implement delta timing for typewriter text, but as we saw there, it appeared by character. I'm actually going to slow that down even more. And I'm also going to add a key to allow me to restart it if I want, just so that I can show over and over again. Okay, now it's appearing character by character, and it'll restart if I ask it to. As you can see, Scribble autotype fade in is it's there to kickstart the typewriter effect. And if I wanted to, I could insert a bunch of lines. Let's insert a bunch of unnecessary new lines here, and I will have it fade in by line instead of by character. And this is per line? Per line. And now when I run the game, instead of fading in by character, it will make the lines appear in descending order. Let's slow that down even more. Because when it's by line, there's fewer lines than there are characters, so it's a little bit slow. There we go. As you can see, each line popped in one by one. And there's a little bit of a fade effect. You can make that more or less smooth using this parameter, the smoothness parameter. I think 1 is about good, so that's what I typically use. Let's go back to per character. As I was saying, this is a little bit clunky using the Scribble created variable. So what you're allowed to do, I'm going to take this entire line. You're allowed to draw stuff in the create event. And this is kind of a GameMaker hack that feels like it shouldn't work, but it does. I'm also going to get rid of some of these new lines. No, I'm not. I can't be bothered. If you call Scribble draw in the create event, nothing's going to appear on the screen because the screen is going to be cleared before the start of the next draw event. Except for in some very specific situations that I won't be talking about because it's not important right now. But what it will do is it will still create the vertex buffer, it will still create the Scribble data, and it will assign it to this variable, which is now an object variable, an instance variable, instead of a local variable. And that means I can call Scribble draw here, and you can draw the string, or if you want to be a little bit more careful, you can just tell it to draw the Scribble data, and it will do the exact same thing. Scribble draw doesn't care whether it receives a string or one of its data structures. And now, instead of kicking off the typewriter effect in the draw event, you can kick off the typewriter effect in the create event. And this will do what we did before. And by before, I mean by character, not by line. There we go, okay. There's the rainbow cake. Obviously, if you really do want to be able to restart it in here with a key press or something, you're allowed to do that. But the point is that you can treat these Scribble structures more or less like objects. Right now, I believe they're DS maps containing various pieces of information. Juju has expressed interest in the looming GameMaker language update that will introduce lightweight objects. Alright, that is typewriter text. And I've been recording this video for 20 minutes, and it probably shouldn't take more than like 7 or 8 minutes to actually explain. Go me. Next order of business is special colors. So you may notice that the color tags in the Scribble markup are along the lines of C_yellow or C_blue or whatever. And these are the GameMaker color constants, and the goal of this is to make them familiar to people who are using this so that they know more or less exactly what they're going to get when they use the color constants, because it's the same as the ones in GameMaker language. But there could very easily become a point in time where you want to use colors that aren't included in these constants. Let's go and look up some fancy colors. It's a telephone. My god, that organization calls every single day, and then, no, I'm not going to give you my money. You're calling me every single day, and it's annoying.
Hey.
If any of you are thinking about going into a career in telemarketing, my advice is, don't. Let's see. This is a nice orange. I think GameMaker doesn't have a built-in brown. That might be a little hard to read against the black screen. Let's make it a slightly lighter, a slightly more orangey brown. Okay, and the hex code is E69900. I will remember that. I will do my best to remember that. What was it? E69900. And I don't believe capital versus lowercase letters make a difference. And indeed, this is the fancy brown. Typewriter text is delta timed. I noticed when I froze the window, it when it was like halfway drawn, when I let go of the window, it all appeared at once. That's neat. Okay, anyway, if you were using the regular draw functions in GameMaker, you could say something like macro C brown and assign it this color code using the make color RGB function, or if you really like being fancy, you can actually give it the hex code, and then you'd be able to summon the constant C brown anywhere in the code as if it was built into GameMaker. Scribble also lets you do that in its own way. So Scribble add color, and it's Scribble add color with a U because it hasn't been aliased to the American spelling yet. The name, I'm going to give it a name. We're going to make it C brown-ish, because it's not exactly brown, but it's close enough. The color, I'm going to say make color RGB, and it's going to be, what is it, E6, 99, and 0. Okay, fine. We'll make them all look the same. And color is GameMaker BGR. This is going to be true. GameMaker colors are weird. Colors in computers in general are weird. Most of you are probably familiar with the abbreviation red, green, blue, which means that when you put a when you put a series of numbers together for a color, the red would come first, and the green would come second, and the blue would come last. Because endiness and because screw consistency, colors in computers are often stored in BGR, which would put the blue first, and then the green second, and then the red last. The value that this function will spit out is actually more along the lines of, which I think I might have typed into somewhere before. My recommendation is that if that makes your head spin, then just don't touch it, and then go scream at the computing world for their inability to come up with a consistent byte order. If you make this color with make color RGB, it's going to be a GameMaker color. That's all I have to say. And once we've safely forgotten about that headache, we can just use the constant C brownish as a Scribble color, and it will behave as if it's one of the built-in ones. There we go. There's an XKCD for that if you want it. Okay, other cool things you can do with Scribble. I'm going to actually cheat and look in this folder of scripts. There is the option to draw set box line, draw set wrap, draw set transform, draw set blend, draw set fade, draw set animation, and draw set reset. Draw reset, excuse me. Box align, that's automatic text wrapping, isn't it? Okay, not quite. This is the alignment that you might recognize from the default GameMaker draw text. I'm going to say FA center, FA, is it middle? Vertical is middle. I think the constants are actually the same value, but let's keep things nice and neat here and not use the horizontal alignment constant for vertical alignment. And this will make the text draw originated at the center. As you can see after, it'll like fade in the typewriter text. Instead of 32, 32, whatever it was, being the upper, I have to think about my directions, the upper left of the text is now the center. If you're interested in drawing text in GameMaker, you know how font alignment works. Not going to spend too much time on that. Set transform. What's a set transform do? Scribble draw set transform. Okay, X scale, Y scale, and rotation angle. Not terribly interested in that. Is set wrap the one that I originally thought box line was? Probably is. Okay, min line height and min line width. So I'm going to mess with the text wrapping, and I'm going to, let's make the min line height, I don't know, I suppose 32, because I can, and the max line width is, what is the width of the window? I think I might have set the width of the window to, 1280 before I started this video, because 1024 was a little bit claustrophobic. Let's make the max line width 800 or so. Okay, it actually does not take a Scribble object. Is this global? Okay, this is actually global, so I think this will need to be called before Scribble is created. Okay, I'm also going to want to get rid of the new line characters so that I can see it in action. I put a lot of new line characters in here. There's one. There's another. And that's it. Okay. So this should do automatic text wrapping, and I hope it does. I have not tried this before. Excellent. Automatic text wrapping. It chopped a couple letters off of the last word. That's great. I will not worry about that right now. Although that is a good caveat to be aware of. And I might want to submit a bug report to Juju's Scribble repository, letting him know that it will do that. Scribble reset. We'll just cancel. Does that have like the wrong number of B's or something? There we go. This will just reset any parameters that were set. Will this also... does text wrapping have to be set to what it is before every Scribble draw call? It does not. So once it's created, it will, the text wrapping can be reset. That's really handy. If it sounds like I don't know what I'm doing, it's kind of because I don't. I wanted to record these videos like 2 weeks ago, and then Juju said, hey, you should probably wait until I finish the next major version of Scribble, because it'll have a lot of really nice changes. And I said, okay, that sounds like a good idea, I'll wait. And then Scribble 5 comes out, and it made a number of changes to a number of the systems that I'd gotten used to in Scribble. For example, the way that Scribble Draw works. And from what I've seen so far, all of the changes have been made with the goal of simplifying the process of using this Scribble extension, which is good for people who want to get into it, but also all of the things that I've gotten used to are now wrong. I love the computer software world sometimes. Okay. Advanced things for serious people. This sounds like a fun folder to look into. What's in here? This will not, I believe, be included in the Scribble Lite distribution, which is one of the reasons I recommend using the regular one. Scribble Draw Get State, Scribble Draw Set State. These are for if you wanted to essentially copy or paste the, for lack of a better word, the settings of a Scribble object. You can see you can copy and paste the scaling, the angle, the color that a Scribble structure is drawn with. Set cache group. This is all new. If you were to come into the draw event and simply draw a text, which I'll just call an anonymous string for lack of better words because it's not saved to a variable anywhere, Scribble won't actually recreate this every single time as you might expect because of the way that it, because of the way I mentioned earlier that it will create an object. Instead, it'll create a cache internally or a temporary storage site so that it can save time without having to recreate and destroy all this stuff every single time. In previous versions of Scribble, you had to do this yourself, and the fact that it's now built in is really handy, and it'll allow me to get rid of a lot of code that was kind of a pain in the neck in my main projects that are using this. But anyway, you can have a little control over this. You can say Scribble, draw, set cache, what is it? Set cache group. And let me look at this real quick. It'll take an ID, which is going to be a number which can be 0 or 1 or 2 or whatever. I'm going to go with 0. I think the default is 0. I just looked it up. I don't remember what the default cache group is. This is all memory management stuff and optimizations and computational space versus time and that kind of thing.
Hey.
It takes a non-negligible... I can never say that word, I swear. It takes a non-negligible amount of time for one of these Scribble data structures to be created using Scribble Draw. So in situations where you have common text that will appear in multiple places in the game, like your party has been healed or whatever, you most likely want to keep that around and not have it be automatically cleaned up, which Scribble will attempt to do periodically. And to manage that, you can use the cache groups. I think the comment in the top of this script recommends that you have, for example, like inventory text in one cache group, and I think it's a dialogue in another. I'm not going to spend time just reading the comments and code in a video. Anyway, there are a few options you can set for these. Allow draw. Most of the time that's going to be true. If you're just using Scribble Draw in the step event, this will probably be true. If you are pre-creating a bunch of the scribbles, like I am right here in this example, or if you wanted to create certain lines of text ahead of time, like your party has been healed or other common terms like that at the beginning of the game, you could set this to false. And this will just skip the step where Scribble tells GameMaker to draw the vertex buffer in the create event, which, as you are well aware, won't work anyway. Freeze. If you've worked with vertex buffers before, you'll know what freezing them means. It essentially makes them read-only and does some hand-wavy stuff behind the scenes to make them faster to render. I can't actually think of any situations where not freezing the Scribble vertex buffers would be beneficial, because as far as I know, you don't modify them once they're created. So this parameter can be set to true. And then you would simply call this function once again before you create the Scribble. And if for whatever reason you want to manually empty the cache yourself, Scribble set cache group flush. There we go. I was looking right at the name in the resource tree and I still typed the completely wrong thing. So this would be handy if you have, maybe if you have all the dialogue for NPCs in one cache group and then you leave the map and then the NPCs aren't there anymore and you don't need the scribbles lying around taking up memory, so you want to get rid of them. You could call Scribble cache group flush on whatever group they live in. And then they would just be recreated the next time they're drawn when you re-enter the map or whatever.
Hey.
While I'm at it, because this video clearly isn't long enough already, it's a video of advanced stuff. I care slightly less about how long it goes than for the basic one. In Scribble config up here, this script won't actually get called at any point in the game. It doesn't have any code that will execute. It's just a big load of macros containing like default values for Scribble and stuff. For example, the default text color is white. Depending on the aesthetic of your game, you might want it to be black or blue or something else. The default horizontal alignment is left. Perhaps you just want text to be drawn centered by default or something like that. I'm not going to go over all of these things, except maybe the cache group stuff. I see the default cache group ID is 0, and by default it will, Scribble will attempt to delete stuff that had been in the cache for more than 15 seconds, or 15,000 milliseconds. You can change that to whatever you want, as per the comment at the end. Okay, there's also some stuff I won't talk about in this video. There is shader stuff. I believe this encompasses stuff like the rainbow effect and the shaking stuff. I am not going to touch shader stuff. As I said before, I'm glad there are people who like to write shaders, because I am not a person who likes to write shaders, and if those people didn't exist, that means I would have to. If you happen to really like shaders, you can go into the Scribble shader and you can mess with it. Somewhere in here there's this is the wave function. If you want to add a different type of effect, you can open the Scribble shader and mess with it. It's open source, so the code is freely available for you to mess with. There is nothing in the fragment shader. It's all done on the vertex shader. Neat. Okay, I really hope this video comes out okay, because I have been talking at myself for 1 hour and 1 minute, and that's a lot of work that I have to redo if I decide I don't like the way that it came out. Use this, mess around with this. If you go into Scribble Drawer, I think I mentioned this earlier, but just in case I didn't, it's really helpful to be aware of. This is the full list of formatting commands, markup commands, whatever you want to call them. This, as far as I've been able to tell, this is slightly incorrect, the line with the hex code. If you wanted to add your own color, you would have to use the GameMaker $ to indicate a hex code. I assume that's a typo in here. That's another thing I'm going to have to complain at Juju at later.
Hey.
There are some other things I didn't talk about because they're just kind of checking off boxes at this point. You can change the font if you wanted to change the font in the middle of in the middle of a Scribble. You can give a couple additional parameters to drawing sprites. You can specify image and image index and image speed. You can do text alignment. You can do scale. Please don't do scale. Fonts in GameMaker are raster instead of vector, and if you scale them up, they'll just look bad. Italic slant, use at your own risk. You can add your own events, which would fire off whenever the auto typewriter effect reaches it. Okay, Scribble, go to town. Once again, I want to have the fancy Still Alive song dancing around on the screen as I end the video. The GitHub repository is in the video description, so you know where to find it. My name is Dragonite. There are a couple other GameMaker tools that I want to make videos about because I really like them and I find them useful and I want people to know about them. I've also got like 1.5 more videos on buffers that I've recorded that I have been too lazy to edit so far, so that'll probably happen at some point before the heat death of the universe. I'm not selling myself very well right now, am I? I will see you all later.